Now students, as we have completed atom molecules and chemical reaction, now I am going to start is matter pure. So for that we are going to give you the digital content for the first 2-3 days, then followed by the explanation part of the chapter each part wise. Okay students, so watch these videos, make sure that whenever you watch them, keep a pencil with you, or like place a textbook in front of you, so that you'll get the clarity of the concepts which are there in the explanation part and which are there in the textbook part. Okay.
Hello friends, this video on Is Matter Around Us Pure Part 11 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. Let's take example where we have to separate two miscible liquids now. Here the liquids are miscible, right? For example, we have, let's suppose, acetone and water. So we have water plus acetone, right? Now you have to separate them. Now we know that both are volatile. Okay, how can we separate them? It's not that easy. But we know that this acetone, it has low evaporation temperature. Low evaporation temperature, it evaporates easily. And water has high evaporation temperature. So with this fact, we'll arrange the apparatus in this, and this is the mixture I have. That has acetone plus water. Now I will heat this mixture. The moment you heat this mixture, which one has low evaporation temperature? Acetone. So just heat this slowly, right? Don't reach that boiling point of water. Heat it slowly at the boiling point of acetone, and then you will see that from here acetone comes out, not the water, only acetone. Why? Because acetone has a low evaporation temperature. The difference in the evaporation temperature of acetone and water is pretty high. When you heat this, you have to maintain the temperature also. You have to maintain the temperature of evaporation of acetone, and then you will see that evaporation of acetone take place here. And now you put some cold water here. So in this case, the cold water comes in and goes out. The only purpose of cold water is whatever gas, acetone gas comes here, it will cool down. And if it is cooled down, since it is slant, the acetone will be collected here. So it will be pure acetone. And whatever will be left here is water. Thus, with this process, we could actually separate acetone and water. And this method is called distillation. Right? So in any case, the one which has lower evaporation temperature is collected here. Lower evaporation temperature. Please note, you have to make sure the temperature is at control. If you increase the temperature to, let's suppose, 200 degrees Celsius, temperature is higher than the boiling point of water also, both water and acetone both will evaporate here, and then again you will get a mixture here. So you have to maintain the temperature. Temperature is a critical factor. Okay, so this method is used for separating of any component of mixture that has that is miscible liquids, but they have different boiling point or different evaporation temperature. Okay, and these should also evaporate without decomposition. It should happen that you can actually evaporate and get it back to the liquid. Something actually, when you evaporate, it's all gone. Right? You heat it at high temperature, the composition itself is gone. It reacts and forms a different chemical compound. That's a different story altogether. Just understand that this process is used to separate two liquids, miscible liquid. They have different evaporation temperature, and also the fact that these kind of liquids you could actually evaporate, turn into vapors, and then cool down, turn into liquid. Okay, so but if the temperature difference between these are delta T is less than 25 Kelvin or 25 degrees Celsius, if the difference is less than 25 degrees Celsius or 25 degrees Kelvin, why I am putting same? Because if we talk about difference, Kelvin or Celsius is all same, because I'm talking about difference, right? So if the difference is less than 25 Kelvin or 25 degrees Celsius, then we use fractional distillation. So that is called fractional distillation. So if delta T is less than 25K, then we use something called fractional distillation. That is different from distillation. I'll show you. Okay, for example, separating different gas from air, they have almost similar boiling point. Or separating different petroleum product, you must be knowing that the crude petroleum is one, and from there you do fractional distillation and you get petrol, kerosene and diesel. All these you get from that one single input by fractional distillation. So apparatus of fractional distillation is almost same as this, except that it has one fractionating column. So I'll show you. This is extra fractionating column here. This is fractionating column, the blue one. So you see this is not there and this is here now. That is the difference. This is fractionating column. This is the extra thing that is added, and this is fitted between the distillation flask and the condenser. So this is condenser, because this condense, and this is distillation flask. Okay, now what this does actually, this fractionating column, this is a tube which is packed with glass beads. So this has glass beads. Beads, you must have played when you were a kid. This is a glass spherical beads. So sphere has a maximum surface area, so it provides a good surface area. Why? See, it provides a surface area for vapors to cool down and condense rapidly. So with that, it is a repeated distillation. For example, let's suppose here you have something. See, what is distillation? So you have something here, water, let's suppose. You heat this, it converts into vapors in this pipe. Then you again cool back, you again get liquid. Right? So, or you have liquid, then come gas, and then liquid. This is one distillation. So what we are doing here is we are providing this glass beads here, and the glass bead provides more surface. So when the vapors comes in touch with this glass bead and get the surface, it cools down, because the glass beads are a little cooler. It cools down, and again what happens is, again it heats, and again it converts to vapors. So you see what is happening here is, in this case, if you don't have the glass beads, from here to here is one distillation process. But the moment you have more glass beads here, it's a repeated distillation here. It's a repeated distillation. So because of the glass beads, we have repeated distillation. For example, in this case, let's suppose this is let's suppose 10% pure. Okay, so after one distillation you get, let's suppose, 20% pure. The next distillation you try the same thing again, you do the same distillation, you may get, let's suppose, 40%, and then you may get 80% pure, right? So like that the purity increase, every time it doubles up. But in this case, if you use the fractionation distillation, in one shot itself you may get 80% pure, because it is repeated distillation. Correct? In this case, in one step itself you get more pure substance, and this is also typically used if the difference in the temperature is less than 25K. So here it is like, here we talk about, if you try to understand the whole concept, you should understand the concept of equilibrium also, right? That we will understand this in the higher classes. Let me explain this. See, when you do a distillation, you don't get 100% pure, right? So for example, it was 10% pure, you get 20% here. So that way you try to purify. But let's suppose this case, this is the 10% pure substance, and you're doing first time only. So here, at this point, at this stage, what you get here is what you get here, if you don't have the beads. So here you have, let's suppose, 20% pure. And if you don't have beads, this 20% pure substance will actually flow and it will come here. But if you put the beads here, at 20% pure itself, it will get the surface area, it will cool down, and again it will boil. So again it will boil, again it will get convert to vapors, right? So at this top, it is actually, you are converting the whole thing into liquid, and again you are heating it up. So from that, again, the moment you try to vaporize it, so you get at this point, let's say 40% pure. Again, this 40% pure vapors again touch this some beads here. It cools down and again it vaporize, so that becomes 80% pure. So with that, what you get here is 80% pure in one shot. Understanding? See, what you are doing here is nothing but, see, if you want to make it 100% pure, you in first round you get 20%. The same thing you do, the same process you do once again, you get 40%, 80%. So in this case, what I'm saying is here you already have 20% pure. So instead of collecting it here and again doing it, you put a bead here. The moment you put a bead here, whatever liquid you're collecting here, this liquid gets collected here. And since it is already hot, the same process continues. The same liquid actually try to vaporize. The moment you vaporize this liquid, only the pure form will go up, the impure will come down. The next water vapors you get here, the vapor you get is 80%, 40% pure. Again, from the 40% pure, when it touches the bed, these beads provide surface area to cool down, as good as collecting the whole liquid, and then again vaporize, right? And then again you get more pure. So you will understand this actually when you understand Rawls law in higher classes. You'll understand that. Just try to understand the concept. Now, the more you distillate, the more pure substance you get, and this is one way where you are doing a repeated distillation.
Thank you. Visit examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online tests, get free study materials, find tutors and mentors, and much more. Thanks once again.
Hello friends, this video on Is Matter Around Us Pure part 13 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. So the question is, how will you separate a mixture containing kerosene and petrol, and the difference in the boiling point is less than 25 degrees Celsius, and they are miscible also with each other. That means they are mixed with each other. So I have a sample which has kerosene and petrol. How will I separate? Since I know that the difference in the boiling point is less than 25 Kelvin, distillation will not help, right? So we have to go for, sorry, it is more than 25 degrees Celsius. So I can actually go for normal distillation. If that was less than 25 degrees Celsius, I would have gone for fractional distillation, but the difference is more than 25 degrees Celsius. I am going for normal distillation. Okay. So petrol has a lower boiling point, so petrol will come and collect in this condenser. Why? Petrol has lower BP. So we have told that the one which has lower boiling point, it vaporizes easily, right? You have to heat gradually, and then you have to maintain the temperature. Temperature maintenance is critical here. You have to maintain the temperature of the boiling point of petrol only, and in that case the petrol will vaporize, and here water inlet and outlet, cool water inlet and outlet, which liquefies that vapors, petrol vapors, and you get this petrol vapors in this, or you get this liquid petrol in this condenser. Okay. The next is how to separate butter from curd. See, butter from curd, we have seen that butter is actually lighter than curd. So here the difference in the density. So we can use centrifugation process, or we can use this churner to separate. So we can use centrifugation process, or we can use churner. Salt from seawater. In salt and seawater, if you see, there is a difference in the volatility. Salt is non-volatile, seawater is volatile, water is volatile. So we can actually do evaporation process. So evaporate, water will evaporate, salt will be in the container. Camphor from salt. Camphor we know is sublimate and salt is non-sublimate. So we can use normal sublimation process to filtrate them. So when you have to find out which process you use to separate these components, first see the properties. How are they different? So in this case, bird and cutter, one is lighter, one is heavier. So we use centrifugation. Seawater and salt. So one is volatile, one is non-volatile. We use evaporation. Camphor and salt, one is sublimate, one is non-sublimate. So we use sublimations. This is for camphor and salt. This is for salt and seawater, and this is for butter and curd. Okay. The next is what type of mixtures are separated by the technique of crystallization. See, crystallization, we have seen copper sulfate, we have seen NaCl getting purified, okay, or NaCl from salt water, Salt water has NaCl. So for this also we use crystallization. So crystallization typically separates pure solid. So it separates, so we have seen this, it separates pure solid in form of crystal. And this everything comes from solution. So it separates pure solid in the form of crystals from solution. So we have seen this example of copper sulfate crystals and sodium chloride crystals getting separated from the solution. To understand the actual difference, more difference between the pure substance and the mixtures, let's understand the difference between chemical change and physical change. You must have heard about this term, physical change, chemical change. See, physical properties are something like color, hardness, fluidity, density, melting point, boiling point. Those things are physical property. Okay. Example, this is liquid, that is a physical property. This water is not hard, soft, it's a physical property. The melting point, boiling point of water is again a physical property. Chemical property are something like the rate of burning, the rate at which candle burn, the wax burn, and the rate at which the wood burn, the rate at which the petrol burns, and the rate at which the oxygen burn, let's suppose the water burns are different. Water doesn't burn. Wax burn pretty fast, right? Wood burn a little slowly. So sodium burns pretty all the more faster. So that kind of thing, the rate of burning, acidic and basic nature, those are chemical properties. Hope you understand physical and chemical property, right? Physical property is something which you see, which you can feel. For example, color. Gold is golden color, silver is silver color, iron is little grayish color, phosphorus is yellow color. These are colors. This is a physical property. The boiling point of water is something, the boiling point is of gold is something, right? The boiling point of gold is more than the boiling point of water. That's a physical property. Water is soft, sodium is soft, gold is hard, or gold is soft. You can say the iron is more hard. So those are physical properties, right? Chemical property, acidic property, basic property, burning property. Now, if you see example, ice, water and vapors. All these has different physical property. This is solid, this is liquid, and this is gas. But chemically all are same. All are H2O. You must know H2O is water. All are same. But if you see, there is an interconversion of state. You heat the ice cube, it becomes liquid. You heat it further, it becomes gas, water vapors. So interconversion of physical state is possible. Okay, but if you see water and liquid, water and let's suppose oil, water and oil, this is oil and this is water. Both have same physical property, that is they are liquid. But if you talk about the chemical property, they are different. Right? They have different smell. Oil burns, water doesn't burn. So they have different odor, they have different inflammability. Okay, so you can have something which has same physical property, different chemical property, or same chemical property, different physical property. Okay, see, in this case, physical property is different, chemical property is same. In this case, if you see, both these two has same physical property here. Here it's same physical property, but I have different chemical property. Here if you see, I have different physical property, but I have same chemical property. So if you see, these are not linked actually. Chemical property and physical property are totally independent. For example, when you burn the candle, if you see the candle is becoming smaller. So there is a change in physical property. Also, candle, this area melts. This from solid it becomes liquid. Change in physical property. Also, since it is burning, candle is converted to light, heat energy. There is a change in chemical property as well. So this is one example where both chemical property and physical property is changing. This is the example where both physical and chemical change take place. So hope you understand what is chemical change and physical change. So in case of burning of candle, the wax is converted to heat energy. There's a chemical change. The solid wax converted to liquid wax. That's a chemical change, physical change. So we have chemical change, we have physical change. Okay, so let's see some examples to understand physical change and chemical change. So cutting of trees, what do you think? It's a physical change. There is no chemistry involved there. There is no chemical change, right? Melting of butter. This is also a physical change. The butter is melted. The butter is same. It is in melted form or solid form. Rusting of almirah. So here there is a chemical change. This physical, this physical. Here actually rusting of almirah is both physical and chemical change. Why? Because when the almirah rust, the physical look also change of almirah, right? It becomes a little brown color. Boiling of water to form steam. So water to steam, water is liquid, steam is gas. There is a change in physical property, but there is no change in chemical property. So it's just a physical change. Here also, cutting of trees is a big tree, it becomes small tree, physical change. Melting of butter in pan, butter is solid and then it's melted, become liquid, physical change. Passing of electric current to water and water breaking into hydrogen and oxygen. So there is a reaction, water will break into hydrogen and oxygen. So if you see, this is a chemical change. Why? Because water is a different chemical. It becomes a different chemical. So this is a chemical change. Also, water is liquid and these two are gas. So I can say it's a physical change as well, because the whole mixture was liquid, become gas. Dissolving common salt in water. This is a physical change. There is no chemical reaction involved here. Cutting fruit salad with the raw fruits. Again, this also you are making a fruit salad from a fruit. You cut the fruit, so you are changing the physical property of the fruit from big fruit to small pieces. It's a physical change. Burning of paper and wood. There is a burning, that means paper is converted to heat energy. There is a chemical change. Also, paper is now not there, right? It turned to ashes. That's also a physical change. Correct? So with that you can visualize what is physical change, what is chemical change.
Thank you. Visit examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online tests, get free study materials, find tutors and mentors, and much more. Thanks once again.
Hello friends. This video on Is Matter Around Us Pure Part 12 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. Let's see how can we obtain gas from the air. Air we know has oxygen, has nitrogen, has argon, has other gas also. So we talk about the composition. Oxygen is almost 21.9% by volume. Nitrogen is almost 78.1% by volume. Argon is 0.9% by volume and other is only 0.1%. These are by volume. And we have to separate them. To separate this, we know that we need some physical property. So let's see the boiling point. Nitrogen, the boiling point is 77 Kelvin. Argon is 87 Kelvin, almost. Oxygen is almost 90 Kelvin. And carbon dioxide, other will ignore. Let's try to focus on oxygen and nitrogen itself. So if you see, there is a difference in the point of almost 13 Kelvin. And that 13 Kelvin is actually less than 25 Kelvin. So we have to use some fractional distillation here, right? So, but we know that at least there is a difference in the boiling point, and we know that air is nothing but homogeneous mixture. Okay. Homogeneous mixture. It's a colloidal actually of oxygen, nitrogen, argon, and other gas. And these have different boiling point, so we can actually and the difference in the boiling point is less than 13 degrees Celsius in this case. So we can actually separate them by fractional distillation. Okay, so what we can do here is we can actually take air, will compress it by applying pressure. It also cool down. When you cool it and when you compress it, you get liquid air. Correct? To liquefy something, either you increase the pressure or decrease temperature. Here we are doing both. Once we get this, what we do is we warm slowly in the fractional distillation. And with this, when you warm slowly, the gas separates out. at different height because they have different boiling point. So if you see, nitrogen has a minimum boiling point 77 Kelvin. It will evaporate first, okay, and it will become, for example, if you see here, this is air under high pressure and cool temperature. What we are doing is we are getting a liquid air, right? This is the normal air. We are putting, it is the normal air. We are putting a filter also to make sure that all the particles are, suspended particles are gone. And then under high pressure and under cold condition, we are making it almost liquid. Okay. Now once we have the liquid here, now we have liquid here. Now we slowly start warming here. So if you see here, this side is more hot, this side is cold. This area is 77 Kelvin temperature, this is 90 Kelvin temperature. Don't increase temperature very high, but this is this range. So the moment here the liquid air comes out, right, through an expansion jet, because it's all liquid here. Till this part we have all liquid. Now the liquid air comes out and we reach this temperature of 77 K. What will happen? The moment you have 77 K, the gas will come out. And which gas will come out? Nitrogen gas will go. And the gas you will fit from some pipe here and you will collect nitrogen gas. Okay. Okay. When argon also has a low temperature, we will get some argon also. Now the remaining gas will come here. The liquid, it is still in liquid form. The gas we have collected as nitrogen. The remaining liquid will come here and that will be the liquid oxygen, because oxygen is again almost 90 Kelvin temperature. So we will collect most of the nitrogen, almost 78% nitrogen will be collected here, and remaining will come here, and that will be liquid oxygen. So if you see here, this is the main point, and please note the temperature is differentiated. Here we maintain the temperature of 77 K. If you maintain the temperature of 77 K, not more than that, because if we make it 90 K here, oxygen will also evaporate and will be collected in this tank. So but this is actually fitted to a tank, and in this tank we want to collect only oxygen, right? So what we do is we make sure the temperature is 77 K here. So with that only oxygen gets evaporated here, because oxygen has the boiling point of 77, and we collect the oxygen. The remaining liquid air is passed on here, and the remaining liquid air typically has more oxygen. So only the nitrogen is collected here. Hope you understood the flow. So let me explain this once again. So here we have liquid air, and this part which you see actually is connected to a tank, and this is nitrogen. This is a liquid air. This is a liquid. Now when you maintain the temperature of 79 K here by applying some heat, maintain this temperature. The moment liquid air is heated to 77 Kelvin, in liquid air nitrogen has the boiling point of 77 K. Oxygen has 90 K. So nitrogen will convert into gas, and this nitrogen will be converted into gas, cooled down and collected here. The remaining liquid air will go here because of the flow, because there is a flow, it will be collected here as liquid oxygen. Okay. The next is we'll try to purify copper sulfate sample. Okay. So in this case there is a copper sulfate sample. This is a copper sulfate sample, and this is impure. We have to purify it. How can we do this? It has some impurities. We don't know the quality of impurities. So what we can do is we can actually dissolve this copper sulfate solution into water. Okay, some minimum amount of water that is required, and you can actually filter out some impurities. The big stone particles actually can filter out. Once that is done, let it dissolve. Actually dissolve the whole copper sulfate solution, and then you filter out. You get this solution, and then you can filter this out with this filter paper, so that if there is some small or big stones particle here, that you can actually filter out. Okay, and then once that is done, and then you again keep in this kind of jar, and then you allow it to cool down. If you allow it to cool down, you filter out. Once you filter out, right? So if you see now, if you filter out, and then you actually allow it to cool down. If you let it cool down, there is no heat here. If you cool down, let it cool down, then you will see that it will become, water will still be here, but this will become transparent water, and the copper sulfate crystals will get deposited here, and this process is called crystallization. Okay, so what we have done is, so we have taken some copper sulfate and we have dissolved this in water solution, and then we have filtered out some impurities, the big impurities. All these big impurities you see are filtered out here. Whatever we got here, solution, then we cooled it down. Actually, not heat, we will cool it down. We'll cool it down, and then we'll see that after some time the crystals of copper sulfate will come out. Okay, same process actually, whatever NaCl, the common salt we get, we eat, that is also purified into seawater. Seawater has a lot of salt, and the same process is used to extract salt from the seawater. Let's see how we get the drinking water purified. Whatever water we get in the city actually is purified by the government, and there's a whole big process for that. So this is the impure water which we get from reservoir. I'll say this is the impure water. The first thing is done is this water is put into a sedimentation tank. Here water is allowed to settle down for some time, maybe 2-3 hours. So here what happens is solid particles, they get settled down, right? The solid particles get settled down here. So we'll see here the solid particles get settled down here, and that's why it's called sedimentation tank, because sedimentation process is taking place here. Now this is relatively pure water. It goes from this tank to a tank called loading tank, right? So here we don't have sedimented impurities. Here we have water without sedimented impurities. So I have relatively pure water, but it will still have impurities in it, which are fine impurities. Now this water is now again allowed to pass through a filtration tank. So in this filtration tank we have sand, we have gravel, we have coarse stones. So this sand is on the top layer, then we have gravel, and then we have coarse stones. So what these does is, these are charged sand. Okay, so when water flows through it, these particles which are impurities, they get attracted towards this sand particles. These impurities gets attracted towards the sand particles, and thus we get more pure water. So we see it has little impure water, it has more pure water by the time it flows through the filtration tank, because the impurities get attracted by this charged sand particles. So here we get little pure water. So once I get pure water, we actually do chlorination. So chlorination kills the bacteria. So we add some chlorine. So with that you kill all the bacteria, and then you get water, and this is the pure water for drinking. Okay, please note here this sand filters, they have charged particles. These charged particles attract the impurities from the water. This is the typical process by which the impure water, typically from the lake or from any water body, a river, is purified, and you get that purified water in the home. Let's take some numerical now.
Thank you. Visit examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online tests, get free study materials, find tutors and mentors, and much more. Thanks once again.